Hi, I'm Samantha, Creative Director at Dance Parent 101, and today I'm going to share with you some really easy ways to cut your PVC for any PVC project that you basically have. But in this instance, it was for making ballet bars for my girls. In fact, I made 9 different ballet bars, and you can have a look at all those videos. But I'm here just to give you a few tips and tell you you really don't need a fancy woodwork, well, this isn't that fancy, but you don't need some sort of woodwork room or special table to be able to cut your PVC and get this project done. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want you to know is that you can cut PVC pipe anywhere. Yes, I'm in like a little workshop here, but if you look at my videos of when I was actually cutting the PVC pipe, I just used some chairs and was outside on the veranda or the pergola or the pergola outside, and I was just cutting it out there. So just remember, you don't have to be in a workshop. If you need to be, it could be cutting it off the kitchen bench. Just be careful about that. So any location is okay. Just know that you will be making a mess. There is going to be lots of shavings and cuttings when we do cut the pipe. So probably best to do it on a surface that you can sweep up really easily afterwards. I just want to show you that you don't need to have some sort of special room like this to cut your pipe, because it actually is quite hard to use a hacksaw and cut your pipe on a table such as this. The first thing you're going to do in any case is measure up your pipe, and I used a lot of 10-inch pieces for my bars, so I'm just going to measure that at 10 inches. Okay, so all you need is your hacksaw, and it's not best to do it this way because you need to hold that sturdy, so I'll go around the other side. Okay, so unless you have a vise, which is one of those machines where you stick it in and it clamps it down, or some sort of clamps to the table, it's not going to be very easy to cut your PVC pipe this way, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to try and start doing my cut on my line. Okay. And my pipe's moving around. Now I'm trying to put a lot of pressure down here on my pipe. And I mean, you can do it. I'll show you that you can do it, but it's probably not the safest and safest way I have found. Stuck. Okay, so we got there in the end, but it was hard work. And if you're making a lot of cuts, like you probably will be for your project, this probably isn't going to be the easiest way to do it. So I'm just going to go get something that everybody has in their house, or you might have a couple of different other solutions of what you can make to have a makeshift bench, and I'll bring it out now. And ta-da! It is just a chair. So nothing too fancy. But I am still going to do the cutting in this room because it does get quite messy. So when you're thinking about where you're going to do the cutting, just make sure that it's on a surface that you can easily just sweep everything up together, because you're going to find that you get a lot of fine pieces as you're doing all the sawing. So again, we start off measuring, of course. So I'll do that 10-inch piece again. Okay, grabbing the saw, and now I can really put my pressure down on here. And it's even better that I've got a cushioned cushion seat, I feel, that I can really put down. I could also, if I needed to, put my knee down just to hold it there in place. I know, really high tech, and maybe if you've got back problems or something like that, maybe try and get somebody else to do it. But if you're relatively healthy and all okay, then doing it like this is where it's at. Otherwise, as I said, if you've got a vise to really hold and lock your pipe in place, use that, but I don't have those tools. I've got a hacksaw. So we've got our pipe, I've measured it, should measure twice. You always should measure twice. Should be 10 inches. Yep, 10 inches, perfect. And I'm going to put my knee on there and I'm going to start. So I've got my hacksaw right on the line there, and I'm just going to go up and down. And already, so much easier. Forward and back, forward and back. Look at that, it's just going straight through. There we go, so easy. Okay, and you'll find that you're going to have a lot of little bits and pieces on the end of your pipe. Simplest thing for that, I was using sandpaper and it was like, oh, this is so hard. Go grab some steel wool and just around the edges, let all the pieces drop to the floor, and all the pieces are gone. Beautiful. So I prefer the hacksaw. They're not too expensive and the teeth on there are really small and it's really easy to get through that pipe. But you may not have a hacksaw, you might have an actual saw. So let's see how that goes through, and we'll use the same technique of putting pressure downwards onto the pipe. Measuring up our pipe. Okay. Putting pressure downwards on that pipe there, and I'm going to start. Now, this is a lot messier. And a little less accurate, I feel. Okay, now this did the job. It was fine. It's got the cut on there, but what I have noticed is that my cut is not as straight. It goes like this around the pipe, and if this is all you've got, it's fine, not a problem, because you're going to be putting the pieces, the fittings over the top anyway. You're not going to see that. So as long as it's basically at the right length and you put that fitting over the top, you should be fine. But if you can, go get yourself, buy one of these hacksaws, because it does make the job a lot easier. Okay, so for my top tips for cutting your PVC pipe for your next PVC project, whether it be for a ballet bar or for anything else, they are starting with number 1. Don't be scared or worried about taking on the project because you don't want to cut up the pipe. It is simple and easy, and all you need is a hacksaw. Which leads me on to tip number 2. Buy and use a hacksaw to do your cutting of your PVC pipe. Tip number 3, wherever you decide to cut, make sure that you're cutting lower than your body so you can really put a lot of pressure on that pipe. If your pipe is really long, you can use several chairs like I did to cut up all my ballet pipe. It's not a big deal, even if your pipe is really long. Just get it on a few chairs and then you'll still be downward. Tip number 4 is to use steel wool to clean the ends after you've used the hacksaw to cut. It gets the ends really nice and clean really quickly. Tip number 5, make sure you do your cutting in an area that you can clean up really easily. Tip number 6, make sure you also think about safety first. If you are a bit worried about anything with cutting, make sure you maybe supply yourself with a pair of goggles or some sort of gloves to protect your hands. If you're a bit worried, take whatever measures you feel that you need to take to stay safe. It might also include wearing a mask if you have asthma, thinking that some of those particles might come up and into your lungs. Tip number 7, always measure twice. Tip number 8. Now, another thing I do is I'm not measuring up the whole length. And the reason I do that is that when you make a cut, you're actually subtracting a little bit off the pipe. So if you just measure your whole pipe up in the first place, then go to cut it, you might find that you're a fraction off in your heights. So it's better if you just measure as you go. Tip number 9. Now, I've found that it will stop if the 2 parts are close together. You need to sort of like hold it loosely so that the blade can run freely in between the 2. Tip number 10. And make sure you do clean up after you've done all your cutting, because it does get on your shoes and everywhere, and then you'll bring that into your house or into other rooms. So just make sure you clean up all your shavings afterwards. So there are a variety of different ways that you can go about cutting PVC pipe. I've been using 32 to 40 mil pipe, and I've found that one of the suggested ways of using a pipe cutter, those pipe cutters really are for smaller pipes, and I'm not going to need a pipe cutter for a load of other projects. So the investment of a pipe cutter that might have cut these thick pipes wasn't really worth it for me. So I've chosen alternative ways. But if you do have a pipe cutter that can cut your pipe, absolutely go ahead, and that is a completely great way to cut pipe, as long as the pipe cutter is big enough to cut 32 or 40 mil pipe. Another way you might cut your pipe is using a miter saw, and miter saw is one of those electrical machines that you pull down on. So you would get your pipe on there and then you'd pull it down, and they're really simple to use. And they look they're really simple to use, I've never used one. They look really simple to use. So if you've got one of those, absolutely go ahead and do that. But you might find that depending on the diameter of your pipe, that the machine actually gets right down to the bottom and doesn't cut the bottom tiny little bit of your pipe at the bottom there. So you might need to use a hacksaw to cut that bit off anyway. So you might need both tools if you do have a miter saw. Another way to cut your PVC pipe would be using a circular bladed saw, one of those ones that you just use like this. But to use one of those, you would have to absolutely make sure that you've secured your pipe into a vise and that you do know how to use it properly. The thing with one of those saws is that you might find it only cuts up to sort of that part, and then you'll either have to use a hacksaw or turn the pipe over and make the cut on the other side, because the blade only reaches down a certain amount. Their blades are only a certain width, so it can only reach down. Well, thank you so much for watching today. I'm going to get on to clean up the mess that I've made. It's all over my shoes and I don't want to bring it back into the house. So make sure you clean up after doing your cuts as well. And happy building and making. Make sure you check out all my do-it-yourself Ballet Barre videos. I've got a few of them, so there might be a project in there that you would like to start. Okay, bye. Clean up, everybody clean up. Gotta clean up, cause it's so fun. Clean up, everybody clean up. Can I get someone to get me a broom? Because I don't want to walk in the house.